Thanks for clicking on my blog. This is Larry Baker, Certified Level 2 Sommelier and Senior Wine and Spirits Specialist for ABC Fine Wine and Spirits in Sunrise, Florida. A quick note about the service I provide by being a blog follower for you and anybody that wants to be a blog follower. It's a little story about a friend or a blog follower named Dwayne Pemberton in Seattle, Washington. He's a wine blogger as well as other things, and he was making a pizza on this brand new steel that he uses that heats up in the oven to give you that crust that you can get only in a wood-fired oven, but he doesn't have obviously a wood-fired oven in his home. But he was at a wine shop and he didn't know what was the proper wine to pair up with this pizza with andouille sausage and roasted poblano peppers and all that. I told him to go to Southern Italy section. He showed me a few pictures of some wines and we picked out a lovely Primitivo from the south of Italy in the Puglia region, and he said, thank you very much, the service was amazing, I love following your blog, but that pairing was amazing. And that's the kind of service you can have, anybody can have, by just putting your email address and following this blog. I found out a few weeks ago that my director of operations, and a shout out to Mr. Francis Butch Devlin up in Orlando, he is one of my biggest fans, and Butch knows a lot about operations, been with ABC a long time. He may not be a level 2 sommelier, he's just a regular guy, maybe drinking wine or enjoying wine or getting information, and his quote to me was, every time I watch a blog, I always learn something, and that's what this is all about. I'm your everyday wine guy, and today we're going to move on. Thanks, Butch, for watching. I appreciate it, and everybody else that follows it. Today, a subject that I want to talk about is fortified wines. Big category here. This is a sign from our ABC Fine Wines and Spirits store. Fortified wines. You've seen the word fortified on cereal. You've seen it on milk, fortified with calcium and fortified with vitamin D. I can trust you, this is fortified with vitamin B for brandy or booze, and that's what they do. What's the purpose of fortifying a wine? Well, I'll give you a couple examples before I go back to the sign. Most people who drink sweet wines or dessert wines like this fabulous, probably one of the best Moscatos that is in the country of Italy or in the United States of America is Ca de Gall. Ca de Gall is the only importer here is for ABC, Nadia Galati, an Albarello import, and it's made by Alessandro Bordo. It's a typical Moscato d'Asti, estate bottled fruit, and it's sweet and it's bubbly and it's delicious, and you can enjoy a lot of these wines. But if you come back here, you'll see, if you can see that on the camera, we're talking about 5% alcohol. 5% alcohol, you know, that's not a lot of alcohol. Because where is the alcohol? The formula for making any form of alcohol is sugar plus the yeast. The sugar eats the yeast and that converts into alcohol. But if you leave the sugar in the wine, that's what gives it the sweet taste. The lower the alcohol, the sweeter the wine. And that may be okay with many people. I drink Moscato, I drink all kinds of sweet wines that only have 5 or 6% alcohol. But the whole purpose of a fortified wine, and in the old days they did it, they fortified it to preserve it as a natural preservative, that alcohol, just like a bottle of whiskey preserves the wine, is so that you can keep the wine sweet and also bring up the level of alcohol and have it more as a dessert wine after dinner digestive. And there's a lot of category that you probably have been using and referring to that you didn't know fell under the category of a fortified wine. For a regular wine, the American law states that you cannot have more than 17% alcohol in that wine, where fortified wines run into 21, 22%, an average of 19 to 21%, because they're fortifying with vitamin B. Brandy. Give you a couple ideas. Marsala. You should only be buying Marsala from Sicily. There are other products of Marsala made in California that people say, I'm just cooking with it, but that makes it's not more expensive. Marsala is a place in Sicily. It has to be government controlled. It's fortified to bring the alcohol. Notice this says sweet Marsala, sweet Marsala. And a lot of people who make savory dishes such as mushrooms or chicken Marsala, veal Marsala, mistakenly buy the sweet one when they should be buying the dry Marsala. The sweet Marsala is only used in Italy or by any chef to make desserts. Certain types of desserts that call for a Marsala. The sweet one is for dessert, or there's actually some good Marsala. Remember, this is a place, not a type of wine. Marsala is a place in Sicily using the grape like Catarratto and Grillo, and then fortifying them. And I'm going to talk about how they do that in a second here. Sherry. A lot of people come in and say, where's your Jerez wines? I want Jerez, that's a type of wine. No, Jerez, as this says here, Jerez, is the place where sherries are made in Spain. And they come in different forms. They come in a dry sherry, but they're still fortified. And then they come in a cream sherry, like Harvey's Bristol Cream. That's one you probably didn't even know was a sherry. People just order it. It's so well known. It's a great product that everybody knows. They've been drinking it for years, but that's a cream sherry. It's not creamy. It just means it's a sweeter style of sherry as a dessert wine, and the drier sherries are used as an aperitivo before dinner. The biggest category I want to talk about, which I think is the most popular of the fortified wine category, is port. From Portugal, from the area called Porto, is the area. Again, a lot of imitation ports that are out there that are great products that are made up in New York State. Taylor makes some great products that they call port, but the real original port comes from Portugal, Porto. And the purpose of Porto, you say, how is that sweet and how is the alcohol here? The brandy, you're thinking brandy like a dark colored brandy that they use for fortifying the wine to bring the alcohol level up, is clear. It's a non-tasting spirit. It's a product they call brandy, but it's really a neutral flavored spirit that comes from South Africa called aguardente, not to be confused with aguardiente, which comes from Colombia as an after dinner drink. This is aguardente. Here's the deal. You've got a bunch of grapes, the red grapes that are used in still wines, but ripened with a lot of sugar in the Douro area of Portugal. Tinto Cao, Torrega Nacional, Tinto Riz. This is too much information, but those are the red grapes that usually go in port, like 5 or 6 grapes that go into port wine. Now you've got all the sugar and you've got it waiting to eat that yeast, and if it eats that yeast, that will naturally bring up the alcohol level, but you'll also have a bone dry wine like the still wines you drink. So the plan B, or vitamin B here, is let's kill the dinner. Dinner time's over for the sugar, and they pour during fermentation with port wine that aguardente or brandy into the barrel, kills all the yeast so the sugar has nothing to eat, and you keep the sweetness of the sugar level, and you also bring the alcohol level. Different countries have different laws. In Portugal, it has to be a minimum, whether it's a sweet, a tawny, we'll talk about that. It has to be a minimum of 18% alcohol. Most of them are between that 19 and 21% alcohol. Different styles of port wine. We talk about a vintage Taylor Flaggate, one of the really greatest products out there for port. There's so many out there. Fonseca, Jose Maria Fonseca. Notice it says a vintage, it's a late bottle vintage, not really important. It's just that all the grapes came from that specific year. These are ruby ports. If you could see, it's dark ruby in the glass. The problem is, ruby ports are a little bit of tannic notes to them, and they're going to be dry, and they're going to have a little bit of sediment. They're still sweet, but they're not as sweet as a tawny port, which we'll get to next. Plus, you got to wait about 20-30 years to drink this, and if restaurants, if you've ever noticed, they pour a ruby port by the glass or a vintage port by the glass, the next person a week later that gets a glass of it, they're going to throw the whole bottle down the sink because there's going to be all that sediment, which is what's preserving that wine for 20 or 30 years in the bottle. They don't filter these ruby ports. The sediment is the natural preservative. So for everyday drinking, I don't want to wait 20 years, first of all, I go with a tawny port. Tawny port, like this beautiful, fabulous Croft that we sell here at ABC. First of all, the bottle's beautiful. It says tawny on the bottle. When you hold it, if the camera picks it up, you can almost see it's a tawny color because of the fact that it's matured in oak casks. So that oak makes it a little smoother, takes away the edge. It's softer, it doesn't have a vintage on it, and you can drink it easily. It's still got the sweetness, 19.5% alcohol. If we go back to our sign here on Fortified Wines, when it gets to port, we make some recommendations. This is it. If you have never had dark chocolate has to be dark chocolate, and tawny port together, or any kind of port together, you're missing out on one of the greatest combinations. You have just created a Bill Nye the Science Guy or a Larry the Wine Guy combination in your mouth. Tastes like a chocolate-covered raisin or a raisinette. Goobers or raisinets with that and port. Chocolate and port is a raisinette in your mouth. Or blue cheeses. Blue cheeses, very strong cheeses, goes really great with port, and nuts go great with sherry. So these are great wines to have with pairing, not just to drink because it has 18% alcohol. Lastly, I want to talk, last but not least, is about white port. White port is, it says Bronco. Nobody's ever heard of it. Nobody knows what it is. Even the people that live in Porto and were born and raised there say white port. And yes, you serve this ice cold. It's still fortified, but with white grapes. There's about 5 of them. The different grapes than the red ones. Muscatel, various of Malvasia. There's about 5 or 6 different white grape clones that they use in Portugal, indigenous to the Portuguese area of making in Porto. And they make a white port. And when you serve it cold, it has good acidity, tastes like apricots, peaches, citrus, and always has an aftertaste of bananas. You can serve it on the rocks like they do in Porto, if people know about it, on the rocks with an orange slice as an aperitivo before dinner. I like it after dinner. Ferrera is a fabulous product that we can't keep in stock. It's only $16.99, and everybody who tastes it buys 1, 2, 3 bottles for the holidays, especially in Florida. It's always hot. The best thing after dinner. And interesting note that a famous reviewing magazine did an article about Reggiano Parmesan cheese. They paired it with 157 wines, and the only thing, not Italian wine, not Brunello, not Chianti, the only thing that paired the best, according to the experts, with Reggiano Parmesan cheese eating it was white port. You can buy the cheese anywhere, but I don't know many retailers selling white port but ABC, so come by and pick up a bottle there. So I hope that clears it up. You could still drink the dessert wines that are, 5%, 6%, 7% alcohol. They're delicious, they're fabulous. There's a lot of products out there, but if you want to have a true dessert wine with that alcohol, you could just have a glass, little 2-ounce glass. 40 years later, come back, enough alcohol to preserve that wine like a whiskey forever and ever. It's still going to taste the same as it did the day you open it, so you don't have to worry about drinking the whole bottle in 3 days. I hope you learned something today. More information is available on our website at www.abcfws.com. Wrap it up. See you next week. And just remember that wine is not for snobs. It's for everyday people like you and me. And Butch Devlin.